Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Jason Nee has extensive work experience in various industries involving health, fitness, and performance. Jason founded Train 2.0 in February of 2017, which is an incredible hockey training platform that I have arguably benefited from. Ask my friends, maybe they'll have a different opinion. Growing up in a small town in British Columbia, Canada, Jason was determined to make it to the NHL. When he wasn't scouted at the age of 18, frustration turned into determination and then into an obsession with finding a better way to learn and develop as a hockey player. That obsession led Jason to study kinesiology at the University of British Columbia, where he graduated near the top of his class for his thesis on player selections and the process of making a hockey team. He later put his training and research to the test by playing professional hockey in the Kontinental Hockey League. Jason is also the founder of his newest project, Aero Supplements, who produce a magnesium bisglycinate supplement, which is the most absorbable, most researched, and most recommended magnesium. Aero Supplements' mission is to cut through the noise of the supplement industry with honesty and simplicity. Jason Yee, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
So excited to host you. I have been just given the amazing opportunity to host some huge names, especially in the field of like metabolic health and nutrition stuff that I'm interested in. I've cried during the introduction, introducing certain people, and I've gotten really starstruck by seeing certain people. And I've watched so many of your videos, dude. It is so cool to actually get a chat with you one-to-one because, yeah, your videos have really helped my hockey game quite a bit. So it's just kind of funny to see the dude that I watch every afternoon when I'm done with work, and I take notes and do different drills when I hit the ice, and now I get to talk to you. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's different when I'm here just, sitting here versus on the ice skating around, right?
Yeah, totally, totally. You do a great job. You're an excellent teacher. You're totally a natural. You're funny. You're really relaxed. The drills are great. You've done a really nice job creating that platform. So I have to give you kudos and a huge shout out for anybody out there who either plays hockey or has kiddos that play hockey. They could definitely benefit from taking a look at your material. You put a lot of stuff out there at a very, very high value. So congratulations on making a wonderful platform.
Thanks, Casey. What was the first thing that drew you in?
Okay. So I'm wearing my favorite jersey. I'm here in the Salt Lake Valley. I've worshipped ice hockey since I was a little kid. My dad does sports here in the Valley, and so I've been exposed to a lot of different sports in the Utah Jazz. I was even like an honorary ball boy for the Utah Jazz, and I just sat underneath the hoop of a professional basketball game and apparently complained that that thing didn't exist for hockey. So and now here I am. We have a hockey team. We've got the NHL hockey team that we acquired from the Arizona market. Came up here very short notice, and the trade deadline is approaching. I'm looking at the roster. I'm not a GM, but I'm seeing a definite lack of a 41-year-old defensive defenseman, beer leaguer. You know what I mean? Like 175 pounds, 5'9". Like it's not on the roster. And I'm sitting by the phone. It's not ringing. And so I kind of decided, like in the afternoon, I'll read or watch something or just do something to relax. And I just decided, like, I'm sure I could find some good training videos. The first video that I pulled up was one about defensive mechanics that broke down 3 different moves that a defenseman needs to do: how to make your crossovers, how to corkscrew backwards, and how to make the turn and the part of the ice that you're protecting. And dude, I'm watching this and I'm like, this is so stupidly obvious, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it. And you apply it, and as you say in the video, this is just simple mechanics. This isn't the end all be all of defensive moves, but this will solve 80% of your problems when somebody's coming up the ice for you. And I have found that certainly to be true. So that's what sucked me in.
Well, that's great. Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, the defense videos are funny videos because it's actually very easy to find clips on McDavid, and everyone loves McDavid. I love McDavid. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But defensive clips are hard to find because there's no highlights of like, hey, this was a really awesome one-on-one defensive thing. That would just look like a boring thing. So those are trickier videos to do, but I think because they're trickier videos to do, there's not many of them, and they're very popular.
The defensive ones that you make are the most popular.
Not the most popular, but they tend to draw people in, and like particularly like backward skating ones, because I think they're kind of niche, and that tends to bring people in for sure.
Yeah, interesting. You talk about the most important defensive mechanic, which is putting your opposite hand up weirdly that some players do defensively. And it's funny too. Like I've skated my whole life. Played the sport. I love the sport. I never really played formally. Like I made it to college and had a really good coach there, but I was so lacking in good coaching over the years and just didn't know hardly anything really truly about the game. And I've had this experience this last year of buying a new pair of hockey skates. And dude, like putting these skates on, I can't skate. And I realized that I have been so on top of my skates for so long and not nearly as much of the ankle angle and the Y angle that you talk about and how important that stuff is. And once you kind of appreciate some of those things and the things you demonstrate and really get into your skates and trust your edges, it can really boost your game. That has been very, very helpful as well.
Yeah, no, what's funny is I have had the opportunity to go down to watch lots of tennis tournaments. I'm a big tennis fan now, and you notice how technical those coaches are and how important technique is. And these coaches in tennis are like one-to-one, giving little adjustments of the wrist and all that stuff. But hockey is such a complicated game, and then the ratio between players and coaches is nowhere near what it is in tennis. So I always say this, which is that hockey is a technical sport that's not taught technically. So it gives a lot of room for someone like myself who has a background in movement kinematics and that kind of thing to come in and say, here's the movement that these top players are doing, and here's how you emulate that. Because players, I think it's like this, it's a desert where there's not enough coaches and that can actually teach these things technically, right? So I think that's where I think some of my content has found a niche in being able to share some of those things, which are actually quite obvious, like you say, but it does need someone maybe with a bit of a science background to break it down for people.
Yeah, and again, you do such an engaging job of that and make it entertaining. And it's and maybe tennis is like this, maybe golf is like this, but I don't
Yes.
know many sports that people actively want to get better at and can do at a very accelerated age. Like I skate my drop-ins with dudes who are like in their 50s and 60s, and they're still wanting to improve. And so I think when you have that skill of being able to break things down, it's the lesson of like, if you want to get better at something, the information's out there. If you find the right person, you'll find the right content, and you can be helped and you can get better at this. There's no real excuse in 2025 when we have YouTube and all these resources and videos. You can find a good coach that can really help you enjoy what you love doing more than you currently do.
Yeah, and part of my message is that technology happened, right? Your smartphone happened. And a big thing was I always tell this story of when I was about 10 years old, grow up, we're watching, I'm very embarrassed to say this at the moment, the odd time they'll turn it around, but Vancouver Canucks fan. And so there I was, I'd be, 10 years old, just a hockey nerd. And I also had like these big Coke bottle glasses. I still require those, but I have contacts now. And we had a 20-inch Panasonic TV. I think the laptop I'm speaking to you from is probably the same size roughly. And you had to wait till 7 o'clock at night, and I would squint at the computer or at the TV, and my dad would yell at me to back up, but I couldn't. I was trying to see what were the players doing, what were they actually, how were they moving, what was going on there, and you couldn't see, and you had to wait till 7. You couldn't hit rewind and all that stuff. So part of my message to players is nowadays you can whip out a smartphone or a tablet or whatever. You can record yourself, you can compare it to an elite mover, and then you can just watch it back and you can form the connections. Now, I happen to be good at that because I've done that for many thousands of hours and studied it in school, but anyone can do it. Anyone can go look at, and this is not just hockey, this is any sport. This is tennis, this is golf, this is basketball. You just look at the video of the top player. You just go on YouTube, screen record it, and then video yourself. And this was something that really, like literally, if you go back probably what 30 years, like it would cost millions of dollars to reproduce that in a lab. Now everyone can do on their smartphone, any smartphone. And that's what's so exciting about, I think, movement and movement science. And you can see across a lot of sports, players and athletes are making huge strides. Like not just hockey, but I think of skiing or mountain biking or all those things. The level just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. And I think the technology is one piece of that. And I really encourage people to take on that resource.
Yeah, man, I love that. Well, speaking of technology, my favorite Nintendo game was Blades of Steel, and I'd always play Chicago because they were red like my Golden Eagles. But when Sega came along, arguably one of the better, maybe the best hockey game ever was like NHL '95. And
Yes.
if you played the Canucks, you could use Pavel Bure. He was basically like the super Bo Jackson from the Oakland Raiders on Super Tecmo Bowl or Tecmo Super Bowl, where you couldn't touch him. He was
Yeah.
so fast. Pavel Bure was so fast, well, in real life, but also the video game was pretty fun.
Yeah, totally. I remember that one. I was a little young for that one, but I do remember playing it. And then the Vancouver always gets EA Sports is in Vancouver, so Vancouver would always get some sort of like special cookies and things like that, or whatever those things are called.
That's funny. Oh, that's great. Man, I could talk hockey forever, but I've got some other things I want to talk to you about, including, performance and fitness for all kinds of things. With your background and training, coaching, and all that stuff, I'm sure there's a lot of things you've learned and had to unlearn and pivot around. So I've got some questions there, but can you tell us, what it was like to kind of have that dream of professional hockey and realize, maybe you weren't going to make the pros, but you could find other ways to work in the industry?
Crushing but transformative. It really was very, and if there's any like athletes or people going through the transition from athletes to becoming a retired athlete, like I want to let you know you'll get through it. It was very crushing for me. My identity was all wrapped around being a hockey player, working hard and making the NHL, and then kind of even deluding myself into making the NHL when I knew it was probably out of reach. And so it was very challenging mentally and emotionally to go through that phase. But it also put a bit of a chip on my shoulder and had me really power through that next phase, which was like, okay, well, if I can't do it, I want to like try to find the answers and then coach that. And so that launched me into the next, chapter of my life and my development. But it wasn't easy. But it certainly provided that fuel and that motivation and that drive to learn and go beyond what I think most people will just casually do on a Sunday. It pushed me to go really deep.
Mm. As you were getting back into coaching and helping other people, what were some of those principles, maybe things that you learned in college that either wouldn't apply or you found not to be as helpful as you were taught?
There's a lot. I think the primary one would be understanding. I mean, you're like a metabolic science guy, so understanding exactly how like intensity worked and like the variables of like intensity volume variation, those kinds of things. And what I began adjusting very quickly as I was going through school was I dropped my volume way down of that middle range strength training. And because what I realized was going on was I was putting way too much effort and energy into my strength training and not enough into my mechanics. I would fry my CNS, I'd have DOMs, and then I'd be not as good in practice. And I was like, and then I realized, well, why am I doing this? Is it for some sort of benefit? Like like I've proven to myself mental toughness, which I think is a good part of that kind of grinding through those workouts. And so I guess I'll specify, which is like call it 8 to 12 reps, 3, 4, 5 sets of say I guess 4 exercise pairings. These are like your kind of classic college hockey training workout. You might do something similar for like, I don't know, football or basketball or whatever. But I realized I'd already kind of gone through the mental toughness stuff, the workout till you puke. So I didn't need to like prove myself there. I had already gained a lot of strength and muscle mass. I was at the right weight that I needed to be at and overall strength. My limitation was not that. My limitation was my hockey skill and my mechanics. And then I also realized I could actually do much less volume at a higher intensity and take way less time and be fresher, and still I kept actually improving in all my lifts and everything. So once I understood that science, I was able to make those adjustments and then get better results actually all around.
Dude, I could not agree more with that statement. I have to explain this to potential clients and consults all the time. People have this idea, and whether they're training for a sport or even just in general, people have this idea like, I want to get in shape, So I want to go work out. I know I need to go to the gym 6 days a week, 5 days a week, whatever it is. And I kind of try to explain it exactly the same way you do. Think of a teeter totter where you have volume and frequency, and on the other side, you have intensity. And your body responds much better to an intense signal given infrequently than it does to that middle ground kind of crappy volume that's just breaking you down and breaking you down and breaking you down without giving you the right effect. And then you end up quitting your program. You're completely demotivated. And then you think, oh, well, next January, I go back to doing 5 or 6 days at the gym again. Is that kind of the way you picture that?
Well, like sort of. So it's an interesting kind of protocol that I went on. And just to be clear, like it wasn't like I just happened across this protocol. I'd been testing all sorts of protocols for years, including, you want to hear my craziest story?
Absolutely.
Okay, here it is. I heard because I was with this coach. He's awesome, and he brought in some guy from Russia, like a player from Russia who couldn't speak English, and he would kind of in broken English tell us what his coaches would do, apparently in Russia. And this story was apparently they'd take a weight, like a 45-pound plate, they'd go to the deep end of the pool, and they would let it sink them down, and then they'd squat jump up out of the water, take a breath, and then go back down. So me being young and excited and gung ho, I'm like, I'm gonna try that. So I did. I snuck a 45-pound plate out of the gym into the pool, which was attached to the rec center, and I did that. And I don't know how I didn't get kicked out, but I tried it. It didn't really do much, but it was cool. And now I have a great story to tell you on the podcast.
That's amazing. Oh, that's amazing, dude. If you ever listen to like I mean, you're Canadian, but like the Miracle on Ice,
Yeah.
different like documentaries, you hear about how those Russians train, how they trained in Russia. And oh my goodness, the stories you hear similar to that are insane. Those guys were pieces of steel.
Yeah, and I got lots of stories on that, but I got to get back to what I actually did. So my point is I tried all sorts of things. Like I tried myo reps, I tried German volume training, I tried pole quin, I would do other things. But the thing that made the biggest difference, but it could be because of I had tried all these other things, right? But the thing that made the biggest difference was a Pavel Tsatsouline style workout, which was I would do 2 to 3 reps of 2 to 3 sets of 2 exercises, and those 2 exercises were bench and deadlift or bench and squat. And the way I would treat those, and I would do it every day. And what I would do is I would aim for but I'd be in and out in 15 minutes. So I would treat it actually as a CNS warm up, and I would get my muscles going, and I would do it actually before games and practices. So I was consistently going up in my weight and strength, but I was also using it to activate myself prior to games and practices, and I was never burnt out. So that was the protocol that I arrived at, and then I was able to take that in through pro as well, and it was very, very effective and like ruthlessly efficient.
Wow, that's fantastic. The book Body by Science. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it completely changed my view of personal training. It's not the same as what you're describing, but it's similar. It basically promotes a 15-minute one set to failure workout. He calls it the big five. You know, your core push pull compound lifts at a slow kind of tempo, and you go to muscle failure, essentially a very deep muscle fatigue, if you want to call it that. And it just gave me a different viewpoint. And one of the major arguments is, I was trained initially. I'm not sure about you, but I was trained in functional fitness. And so we learned that, okay, we're hockey players. So let's find activities in the gym that look like hockey. So maybe you'll stand on a BOSU and you move a weighted bar back and
Yeah.
forth,
Yeah.
or you'll jump side to side like a skating motion, or you'll take a TRX rip and whack it like you're going to slash somebody across the knee or whatever. But the argument that was put forth in that book that really changed my viewpoint of it is none of that stuff is hockey.
No.
Hockey is played on ice. It's
Yep.
with 5 guys and a goalie on each side. You're chirping your buds. It's played at a certain speed. You play a certain position. Do not waste your time in the gym trying to mimic things that look like hockey use the gym to get very strong, get some of
Yeah.
those other side benefits. Now go take that time and energy and practice hockey in the context of hockey. It sounds like you agree with that.
Absolutely, 100,000% agree. That is exactly what I think. And I got and I had to kind of get there too through, I think, hearing those ideas from people, but also through testing it myself, because I also tried to be hyper specific, and it didn't actually translate. So, I worked with this really great coach. He had brilliant mind. And he was all about that specificity, and I tried it. Like, we had all these like super hyper specific things, and it didn't translate to performance. They're good workouts, and they were like exciting and fun and unique, which I think is an important part for some people and some athletes. I'm not knocking that, but it didn't make a difference to the actual mechanics. It wasn't until I identified that where I realized, oh, I need to not do more of these like crossover bench hop things. I need to actually go in and figure out how to move my ankle the way that Connor McDavid moves his ankle.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, using like heavier sticks or weighted pucks, or you see baseball players use the donuts on their bat. The argument again that he makes in this book, Dr. Doug McGuff makes in Body by Science, is like these guys are so good that they don't screw their timing up
Yeah.
despite using that kind of stuff. Where somebody at my level, it totally changes the context, and it doesn't carry over in the way that people think that it does. So I appreciate your opinion. I appreciate how much you have tested things over time. And I've been curious to ask this. We talked a little bit before, but I actually this is an honest question. I don't know what you do, but for yourself personally at this point, you're busy. I assume you're still skating, probably,
Yeah.
not at the same level, but like, really good beer league type hockey kind of level.
Yeah.
How do you approach your own fitness, running all the businesses? I assume you don't have a ton of time. Like, what are your workouts like today?
Yeah, so I do fortunately play at a really good level. I went to UBC, and then we have a UBC alumni league. So it's all alumni
Uh,
players. So it's really awesome because I don't get slashed so much because everyone's in the same boat. So I'm still playing hockey usually twice a week. I ski, I play tennis. But then in terms of so I kind of treat those as activities of both cardio and just like things I like to do. So that's really awesome. I try to do that lots. But then kind of my two fitness things are I actually have been maintaining that undulating Pavel Setsulin style of the 2 to 3 uh, lifts, 2 to 3 reps, 2 to 3 sets. So I do that, and because it's just so time efficient, I just keep that going. And my lifts, again, they keep going up as long as I stay consistent with that. And then I even though it probably isn't like optimal for like health, I do I believe because I think I get my high intensity intervals from hockey and tennis a lot. But I just signed myself up for a half marathon, and I just train for that. So
nice.
that I just kind of just treat myself like a runner and train for that, and that just kind of covers my cardio base that I know I want to have. So with those, kind of do activities I love, do my lifts, and then just train for a half marathon. That like mostly covers my bases.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations on the half marathon. That sounds really fun. And like, okay, so if somebody were to ask you, let's put the activities to the side. That's kind of how I think of them as well. If you told me hockey was going to kill me, I wouldn't care because I love to play and I'm just going to go play. I don't
Yeah.
consider that like exercise. That the high intensity interval is a side benefit. I just love to play. The exercise is the lifting that I that's what I define exercise as. So for you personally, what is your time volume in an entire week that you're lifting away?
Time volume, like it would be that. So like 6 to 7 days a week, I'm doing the lifts, and then I'm doing like 3 reps, or yeah, between 2 to 3 reps of 2 to 3 sets of RDLs, remaining deadlifts, and then 2 to 3 reps, 2 to 3 sets of bench press. And then what I treat that as, like, that's my daily discipline. Like I do that every day, no matter what. But then if I have the additional time, that's when I'll add in, I might do chin-ups, I might do some additional volume, some additional reps, some auxiliary stuff. So I just make sure that if I'm in a time crunch, I like absolutely need to do something, like I always make sure to do that. And then
Yeah.
I add on beyond that.
I wish more people knew that again, you don't need tons and tons and tons of time. You're able to maintain your strength by being consistent. I think it's such a big key rather than trying to get it all done at once and doing all these really hard workouts that take a really long time to recover from. I think most people would be surprised that somebody with your health and fitness really doesn't spend that much more time in the gym. Yeah, if you do have the additional time, you can throw some extra movements in, but you're prioritizing the big ones. I wish more people knew that you don't need tons and tons of time, and with the consistency you can build an incredible base of fitness and be very, very healthy.
Yeah, and I think the biggest like analogy that got kind of um like analogy slash science that stood out to me and just seems to work for my body. And one thing, I don't know how much you've gone into like Charles Poliquin and like the different like his theory was that there's different like types of kind of neurotransmitter dominance. I don't know how like legit that is, but it kind of explains why some people you just put them under weights and then bang they just like explode and they just grow and they're just big and huge and massive, and like others like don't respond that well, and like others like are constantly getting bored. And so his idea is that there's different neurotransmitter dominance types, and this style of workout just seems to work for me. And it kind of always has once I found it. But the it's like that post activation potentiation. So you do your first set and so I'll do it. Let's say I'm doing RDL at 315. I'll go pick it up and I'll do the 3 reps at the 315. That first set will actually feel kind of hard. The second one, due to the post activation potentiation, is actually going to feel much easier. And then by the third one, it's actually going to feel easier again because Pavel Tsatsouline calls it greasing the groove. You fired up the CNS to fire those muscle fibers and those like the neuromuscular junction, and you've fired that boom boom boom, but you haven't fatigued it. So you've the theory, it's hard to know for sure, but the theory is like you've created that myelination, and like you've greased that groove, and now you go into the rest of your day, you're actually stronger and feeling more activated after the workout than before.
Wow.
And that just seems to like just jive with me, versus if I were to now sit and do another 3 sets and then add more weight and try to hit my 1 rep max, I'd fry my CNS and then I'd be toast for 3 days.
Yeah.
um, and not just in the gym but also like I'd find myself like needing to sleep more and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I know that's like a very different approach, but that's what's worked for me over the years.
I mean, there's lots of different approaches, right? There's tons of different books and experts all over the world promoting all kinds of different things, and doing what you did, mixing it up and trying and seeing what sticks is probably the best thing. So I really like that. The concept makes a lot of sense, and it explains why you can do that and then step on the ice and still have a really, really good game. It's not, taking away from your overall energy. It's contributing to it based on what you said. So I do appreciate that. Curious to know, our audience is largely in the nutrition world. Is there anything you've learned or changed your mind about as far as nutrition goes as you've been doing this for a while?
Um, Mostly just like cut out sugar, like
Yeah.
just no sugar. And I find it so hard because I've got a sweet tooth, but like I think that has been the number one correlation I've had between um like like testosterone, like feeling like I have energy and good sleeps, and like what I presume is testosterone, using the I don't know how much you go into the Brian Johnson like morning boner kind of thing. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but that is, if that's a good litmus test, like I think that the no sugar thing really drives that, and just the overall kind of like reducing carbs that are simple, right? Like I think those have been the biggest thing. And I think probably when I was playing hockey, I was consuming more carbs. And now that I'm not at all at the same like intensity or volume, still doing a lot of stuff, obviously, but I find that that's kind of the best thing to do to keep my energy levels up, and I think my hormonal health.
Yeah, very interesting. I've been on carnivore diet for just over 6 years now, and you're talking to a large contingent of the audience that is following a similar, very low carb or keto or carnivore diet because, dude, we're little addicts, man. I'm a sugar addict, and if I start, I have a really hard time stopping. And it,
Yeah.
for me, I'll never tell anybody that things like fruit are bad for you. Like, no, it's not bad for you. I just know that if I have it,
Yeah.
I get the rise and the crash, and then I want to eat all the candy bars. And it just like
Yeah.
my anxiety comes back a little bit. And so for some people, they just learn like, I can't mess with this stuff. It's more chemical than it is nutrient. And in my brain, it just doesn't work that well. And some people have to just learn that they're abstainers and they really shouldn't have any sugar. So, anyway, it's cool that you learned that. And with my what I used to do in measuring energy using metabolic carts in my career, that's what kind of led me to some of these dietary approaches, especially for endurance sports. So it'll be interesting to see as you're training for this half marathon. When I was doing endurance sport before, eating the carbohydrates, you're trying to push out that bonk versus teaching your body to use fat as fuel, and then you like never bonk. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of evolves as you're doing your training, and if going even lower in carbohydrate and increasing or including at least a little bit of fat in the diet will help with the endurance side of things.
Well, it's funny because yeah, like in hockey, the common wisdom, and there was literally a book called Complete Conditioning for Ice Hockey. And I remember at the time it was like you looked at it, it was like, what's the most amount of like grams of carbs per gram of whatever? And it was like raisins. And the logic at the time was like, eat all the carbs you can. So like me and my mom, bless her, because she's trying to help with hockey. We're like, let's go to Costco and get a lot of raisins. And so I'd always just be shoveling raisins in my face before every hockey game. But yeah, like it's funny because I trained for the half marathon. I ran it at the start of this month. And I'll do another one. And there was like, I don't know, I woke up and I think I had, I don't know, I think I mostly just had electrolytes and like water and coffee. And that's what I had for breakfast that morning. And my friend was like, whoa, how could you do this on an empty stomach? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know, like I do it every day. Like I always wake up, do my training run, and then like and then I actually usually don't even eat. It's 1 o'clock right now as we're recording this. I haven't had anything to eat yet today. So
Yeah,
um, it and yeah, no bonking has happened that I'm aware of. Like
there you
so
go.
that's it's very interesting that versus the what we were kind of taught in hockey before.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I misunderstood you. I didn't know you had completed the half marathon and signed up for another one. So congratulations on completing the half marathon. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
thanks. Yeah, it was fun. I've never done it. It was nice to do something kind of competitive again. Like I talked about my awesome hockey league. It's just a bunch of guys that are just playing for fun still, but it was cool to be in a race environment again. I had not felt that kind of energy in a long time. And then
Cool.
that was I you kind of I don't know, I'd never been a guy growing up thinking I would do something like that, but I did it and it was fun.
Nice. Good for you. That's great. And then talking nutrition leads us into supplementation. And I'm really curious, why did you decide to get into the world of supplementation? You started the business Train 2.0. Your other business, I believe, is called Grant Me, which I'd love to hear about as well. But what made you think that you wanted to start to get into supplements?
Well, I think probably the starting point is like I'm a huge like just business nerd and then also like health and wellness nerd. So I uh from the get-go with like Train 2.0, I knew I wanted a business. So I started with that and then my wife started Grant Me and we now go by Admission Prep. Well, we have both brands going, but Admission Prep. So we help students get in their top choice school and win scholarships. And that was, a really cool project. It's still going. But I grew up and I don't know why, but I was always fascinated with supplements and supplementation. And I thought, you know, and actually like I was able to get like I think probably good results from it while playing hockey. So I'd supplement with creatine, beta alanine. But a big one was sleep and like making sure I was sleeping well. So I'd try to make sleep stacks. And at the time, the supplementation and the knowledge around it was nowhere near what it is today. It was pretty a lot of hearsay. But I I started taking some supplements, magnesium bisglycinate, But I just noticed this strange phenomenon, which was that whenever someone would ask me, because they would often ask me, oh, what supplements should I take for XYZ? And I'd usually have a stack, and then they'd ask me what brand. And I would be like, well, maybe this brand, but it was never like easy to remember. And inevitably, they'd go to the store and buy the wrong one. And it would always happen. Like literally, like I'd be like, go get magnesium bisglycinate. And they'd get like magnesium citrate or something. They're like, oh, this makes my stomach upset. And it was the wrong thing. So I realized like, okay, I think we need just like a brand that is one is going to be like super high quality so that people feel good recommending it, but then easy and identifiable to recommend. So I tried to put all that together and said like, let's start a supplement company. Two companies isn't enough. I need a third.
Quite a commitment.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so interesting. So tell us a little bit about magnesium itself. I think a lot of people will know that not only are there a lot of brands, there's a lot of types. Um,
Hmm.
and they're promoted as for different benefits. Like one is good for sleep, one is good for recovery, one is good. And I'm not sure how true any of that is. And so can you tell us about magnesium in particular? Why it's needed in supplement form and what forms are the best to take?
Yeah, so the what's very interesting is that if you go one or two layers into the research, it is thinly veiled BS. Like it is I wonder even how very legitimate people can like speak to the research on it. Um, because there's a lot of baloney out there. But I think what we do know is magnesium is I'll start with the main reason I started taking it was for sleep. And I would take it before bed, and I just noticed when I would take it, I would have a much deeper sleep. And as you know, tracked on my uh, Apple Watch at the time, and now my Eight Sleep Pod, like it shows if I have it versus don't, I have more deep sleep when I take the magnesium. So that's why kind of like I originally started taking it. My first foray into it was, and yeah, I'm up in Canada, so it was a magnesium bisglycinate and oxide blend. And this magnesium oxide blend I would take, and like I was like, yeah, okay, I get a little bit farty after. Like, and it kind of stinks a bit. And my wife would take it, girlfriend at the time, and same thing. We were just like, that's part of the journey. Um, but what we started to realize is if you get to kind of more pure bisglycinate, it is more easily absorbed into your stomach. So magnesium bisglycinate is one magnesium molecule bound to two glycine molecules, glycine, the amino acid, which aids in sleep anyway. So if you take magnesium bisglycinate, it is more absorbable and it is more therefore it's gentler on your stomach. Magnesium oxide is legitimately meant for what's it called? The basically cleaning out your colon.
It's
Like
laxative, right?
yes, literally meant to be a laxative. So if you have magnesium oxide, it is not absorbed, and it is for that purpose. That's why people have GI distress. So so that's what kind of got us onto magnesium, then magnesium bisglycinate, and that was kind of the starting point to all that. The other types of magnesium, it's very interesting because even if you get into the magnesium bisglycinate research itself, it's kind of a bit shaky as to is it truly magnesium bisglycinate that people are supplementing with? I would very much question that. We can go into that in a second. So then all these other forms of magnesium, kind of like creatine monohydrate. It's like you creatine monohydrate is the most studied. It's the most like kind of like clear which one it is. So you can try creatine HCl and creatine blah blah blah, but it just hasn't been studied as much. So magnesium bisglycinate, I think, is probably kind of um the most kind of studied and used. Um and like I would say like your next best ones to think about are magnesium malate because it's kind of more absorbed by the muscles, they say. And then citrate if you don't mind some of the stomach distress that comes with it. But then other than that, threonate is the kind of big one that Huberman pushes through momentous, and that one might work, but the research behind that wasn't in like independent, like was funded by um I think the Mag team, which is the actual supplier of magnesium threonate. And then also the research that's available that said that it helped, was the magnesium threonate was also combined with two other things, I think L-theanine and something else. So it's a little bit, and not saying it's not possible, it's just that there's not as much like literature around that. So that's like the full data dump on magnesium, but I'm sure there's lots to jump into with
That's
that.
great. Can I just take a side aversion and just ask you personal opinion, what you think? Like, what do you think of Huberman? Is he somebody that you follow for like advice and protocols and that kind of thing?
I'm a big protocol guy. I love it.
Okay.
But I filter everything he says. I just say protocol guy because I find protocol, the word protocol funny, right? Like that's what they say about like people like, God, he's a protocol guy, right? So yeah, like I am definitely like interested in what he has to say. But I learned a long time ago to like make sure to filter what everyone is saying through the context that's relevant for me. So I think that's, and he's a content guy, like, like me, like you, he's got to create content. So he's got to come up with new and exciting stuff that gets readership and listenership all the time. So
Yeah.
that's part of it too.
Yeah, well said. He's a big listener of our show, by the way, so he'll be listening. So any other benefits of magnesium supplementation? The things you hear about, like with, I don't know, helping with heart palpitations or muscle cramping. Any other benefits you've noticed with the form of magnesium that you're making?
Yeah, so I have noticed definite benefits with less cramping. That was actually an issue that I would have often was with cramping, and like particularly in hockey. So I make sure to supplement, like, so I'll do like one usually in the morning and like two before bed, and that has helped a lot with cramping. The other common one I get from people is it helps with their sore back. And I think it's because it helps to relax your muscles. So I think maybe it helps um with the muscle tension. And I always like try to separate out when I'm saying these things. It's like there's anecdotes and then there's the research. And even though the plural of anecdotes is not data, there also is the Jeff Bezos quote, which is like, if there's an anecdote and that is, not agreeing with the data, often the anecdote is right. So even though from a pure science lens, you might not be able to say this thing with that pure science lens, if it is a real experienced thing, your 80% of an effect is often the placebo. But if that's working, I'm not saying that we should ignore science or ignore purity. That's my biggest thing. But if it's working from a placebo perspective,
That's
then
the
then it's
only thing
working.
that matters. That's the
Yeah.
only thing that matters. If it's your N of one, that's the thing. I was at a conference and some guy did the same thing. He got on stage and he was like, what's the highest quality study that we have? And everybody, kind of said, oh, well, it's a randomized, double-blinded, controlled, whatever trial. And he's like, no, it's an N of one if you're the N of one. Like that makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate that. Okay. So what has your experience been in the supplement industry, this wonderful, self-regulating, self-policing industry where nobody means to do any harm to anybody? They're not just out for profit. Tell us a little bit about the supplement industry itself.
Let's go. So I'll tell you about our first batch. So you kind of know why we started the company, and our initial view was like, well, let's focus on the bisglycinate. Let's get the oxide out and let's have a nice bisglycinate. And it's very popular and blah blah blah. And we went to our supplier and we said, hey, can we get it to be pure bisglycinate? They said, yep, absolutely. I said, awesome. And they said, here's the COA. So for people that don't know what a COA is, it's certificate of analysis. And when you have the raw material, which was magnesium bisglycinate powder in this circumstance, the supplier produces a certificate of analysis. Now, me being new to the industry, I assume certificate of analysis means that it's certifying something, but it wasn't certifying anything, it turns out, because even though it said it was 100% pure, it turns out it wasn't 100% pure. And the way that they arrived at the 100% pure number was through a theoretical calculation. They literally took the molecular weight of the magnesium bisglycinate powder and they said, here's the formulation, here's the actual weight, ergo, it's about 99% pure. And that is how they arrived at their purity calculation. So, and there's so much to this, but that is the kind of COA debacle. So what we did and how we're taking, so anyway, we had some customers who pointed out that like, hey, it seems that your magnesium measurement for pure bisglycinate is maybe not 100% possible. Could you look into that? And we said, well, here's our COA. It says it's 100% pure. They said, we're not sure. So we dug deeper. And I think we're probably the only company in the world to actually go that level deeper and say, push back again and again and again on our suppliers and our raw material suppliers. And they came back and they said, uh-oh, there's a bit of oxide in there. So
Wow.
that was very interesting. So then when we went to go and figure out, okay, well, if we're going to do a batch 2, obviously we want to fix this. We want to make sure that this never happens again. How would we go about doing that? We thought, well, we need to make sure that the raw material that comes in isn't just trusted by a certificate of analysis that is made by the raw material supplier and theoretically calculated. We need to actually test that raw material, like ourselves, with a third-party lab. So we did. And it turns out all of these magnesium bisglycinate powders that are supposedly 100% pure are not. They are actually the highest one we found was 85% pure. But there's another two that were it was like 60% and 70% pure when they, on their certificate of analysis, said they were 100% pure. So it starts at the top with that raw material, like certificate of analysis. If that is incorrect, the manufacturer and then the brand and then the consumer all take their information from that first COA, which turns out is incorrect. So I don't know how much this happens in the rest of the industry. We've just focused on one SKU, but what are the odds that a supplement company trying to do their first batch encounter this problem on the very first batch?
Yeah. And to go to the levels that you guys went to, it's insane. This is not cheap to do. It's
No.
not cheap to outsource these ingredients and to get them third party tested. And what I find to be amazing, to be so open and honest about it. Like we said in the introduction, it's part of your mission, it's part of your goal. But also, it's like you could have just said, like, first batch, didn't get it right. Let's do better the second time. But we'll just, let's get this out there, sell it. Let's not write about it. Let's not publish the numbers. You were completely upfront about it. And yeah, the way you decided to approach it, I think is amazing. And yeah, we we don't know other companies and what they would do, but I'm willing to bet that probably none of them would do that.
Well, thank you. And it's been kind of it's been very like scary to do. And we thought, but we also kind of thought that actually going back to our initial response from the manufacturer, and I don't believe they're a bad actor. Like I don't believe they were purposely trying to mess anything up. I just think this is the norm in the industry. When we said in Canada, we stopped selling, right? Which is technically considered a level 1 recall or class 1 recall or something or other. We're not actually recalling the product because there was nothing unsafe about it, but we just chose to stop selling. And if you do that, that is technically a refund or a recall. And so, we explained this to our co-manufacturer, and they said, "Oh, no, 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 you don't need to do a recall. You don't need to do a recall. We can just go to Health Canada. We can just change one of the ingredients, and then it's all fine. Don't do a recall." And we're going, I'm like, I know we could, and I know that like I'm sure not too many people would notice, but like that is not right. Like not that's not right. And so I feel like companies do this all the time. In fact, I know this because there's these companies selling on Amazon right now and in stores that have the exact same specs that we had that are saying they're 100% pure. It's not physically possible for them to be 100% pure, and they are saying that they are. And, I don't know, they're just, I guess, hoping no one's going to notice or test or whatever. So yeah, it took a lot of, we were very upset, and it took it, and it's still kind of scary to even admit what went wrong. But we feel that it's a much better message to share this, because we're not going to win against some major company anyway. Let's just be honest about it.
Well, I love that approach, and I always believe in the kind of karma that comes around when you do the right thing and stand by your values. It seems like it always pays you back. So I think it's a really great approach, and I love the openness and vulnerability and the honesty behind it. One of your blogs that I really liked on the Arrow website talks about some of the games and the names and some of the things that supplement companies try to do to sell product. Can you tell us about some of those things that maybe people should be watching out for?
Well, definitely the 100% pure thing. There's a lot of, like, it's hilarious. On the label, it'll literally say pure magnesium bisglycinate. And then like you flip it around to the back and it's like 70%. It's like, well, what did you mean by pure if you put it on the front? So like that's a confusing one. The elemental magnesium versus like magnesium bisglycinate is a big one. So part of the reason oxide is popular is because the elemental magnesium per gram is much higher. It's like 60% of magnesium oxide is actually elemental magnesium. And it's more like 13% is like what's maximally magnesium in magnesium bisglycinate. So you can get more quote unquote bang for your buck, but at the expense of more GI distress and it's not as absorbed. So a lot of companies will pump up their elemental magnesium numbers on the front, and it's really just by putting more oxide in it. And then the last couple are saying, it's like, oh, 400 milligrams per serving, but the per serving is like 8 capsules, right? That's another good one. And yeah, I think those. Oh, the other one, the last one, and I don't know if this is just a convention in the States versus Canada, but I noticed when I go to the US and look at magnesium bisglycinate, they'll say the total amount of the powder. So, for example, in our capsules, we have about 900 milligrams of the magnesium bisglycinate powder. Of that, 160 milligrams is elemental magnesium. So, in the States, I notice, and sometimes in Canada, they'll put the full amount of the powder on the front of the label. So they'll be like, oh, 980 milligrams of magnesium bisglycinate powder, but only like 100 and whatever of that is actually magnesium.
Got it. Wow. Okay. I've asked people on this show with supplements how they choose them, what companies they go to, and I'll ask like where can people get their supplements if they're confident? And basically, like the best answer I've ever gotten is like, oh, you just want to find a really good high quality company. And it's like,
Yes.
first of all,
And
like,
then trust them.
yeah, yeah,
Just trust them.
yeah. And so, well, of course, you want to find a good supplement. You don't want. You're not going to answer me. Find a terrible company that makes an awful product. Like we want a good quality supplement. But how do we know? How do consumers know with something that's completely unregulated, like supplementation? What things should they be looking out for? Obviously, buying magnesium from you, but other supplements, creatine, fish oil is very questionable. Like there's a lot of other things that people are getting. What kinds of standards should people have? What kinds of standards do you have for your own personal supplementation when you're looking outside your own company to buy a high quality product?
Honestly, I just have to guess. I have to guess and go by gut feel, because there is no actual way to test. So, for example, I take a creatine brand that is a reputable brand, but there's no actual way to know what is in the creatine. There's no way to know. So it's a brand that's been around for a long time. Lots of my friends take it. It's like a good, clean looking brand, but that's legitimately it, because um, unless they actually show the raw material third party tests, there is no actual way to know. And I'll tell you one, I'm sure people will know the company, but they aim to be transparent. That's their goal. And they share something called a certificate of composition. So that, imagine you have imagine we Arrow made a stack of 4 or 5 things. That's not our intent, but let's say we did. And then we asked our manufacturer to just say, please certify what's in here. And then they literally just wrote up a thing that said it's 20% this, 10% this, 10% that. And then they gave you that, and that was their certificate of composition. Would you trust the accuracy of that?
I mean, you'd like to, but it's like you said, like even batch to batch, buying from the same manufacturer, you don't know. Bottle to bottle,
Don't
capsule to
know.
capsule, you just don't know.
Yeah. And so that is, but that is what these companies are doing is the co-manufacturer, even when they're trying to be transparent, it's just the report from the co-manufacturer of what they intended to put in the mixture is your certification. The other one is like NSF certification. Like that is more stringent. It costs a lot. There's supposedly batch testing. I'm sure there is, but how would I know that? How can I actually trust that? Because it's batch testing, but not every batch. And so batch to batch could be different because these companies have tons of SKUs and lots of stuff. And then one last one is like GMP certification. Like
I was
every,
going to ask.
yeah, but like every manufacturer is GMP certified. Like, if you go find someone that's not GMP certified, it would be like, my neighbor's basement. That is like it's kind of like the baseline standard for manufacturing facilities. And so like if someone puts that stamp on the label, it's like if you have an orange and they're just like they put a stamp on it. They're like, this is 100% an orange. And you're like, well, obviously. So like those are the things. So I mean, until Arrow gets there, to be honest, just go with kind of like the well-known, trusted brands that are out there. But there's not actually a way to like it sounds ludicrous to say it, but like in my cabinet right now, I have some brands and I'm just hoping. I really just hope.
It's a very honest and yeah, it's a good answer. It's a little frustrating, but it's nice to hear that answer. And yeah, I wonder about that stuff all the time. So that's a really good way to approach it.
Yeah, and it's not like it's zero, right? Like so like I really doubt it. Like even our ones that were supposedly 100% pure that were actually 60, it wasn't 0% magnesium
Yeah.
bisglycinate, So if you're getting creatine and you're not getting exactly what you're paying for, you're not you're not getting like horse hair. Like you just might not be as pure as they say. So it's
Cool.
not catastrophic, but it's also not where the standard we believe it should be at.
Yeah, I love that. What other products are you thinking about bringing on? How are you looking to expand in the future?
Yeah, so we want to kind of be a like the kind of the most well researched supplements that are just like the staples that everyone kind of should be taking. So like, omega-3, vitamin D, creatine, like we don't want to kind of chase trends of like whatever 2025 or 2026's Garcinia Cambogia is. Nothing against it, but we don't want to like do something we're kind of taking more the Jeff Bezos approach. I brought him up a couple times today, which is like, I don't want to think about what's the trend that's going to come and go. I want to think about what's the thing that's not going to change in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So we want to live and own those spaces is like, let's have the highest quality supplement in the supplements that aren't going away, that aren't a trend. So all those kind of basic ones are the foundational ones. Those are the ones that we want to enter, and then it takes a lot of work, as you've said, to make each SKU and now test each SKU. So we can't do a gajillion SKUs. So we want to be focused on those high impact ones.
Those are great ones to focus on. I'm not a huge supplementation guy, but you're right. Like it's really difficult to get some of those nutrients in the quantities that you need them, especially if you've already dug yourself a nutritional hole and you need to get yourself out of it. Like
Yeah.
our soils are way too depleted. You can't get as much magnesium out of the food as you used to. People aren't getting outside as much as they should. They need to take a bit of vitamin D and the omegas. I'm glad that you're focusing on that kind of stuff, and I look forward to see what other products you guys come up with in the future. And yeah, just knowing that your core values are so strong and you're always going to do the right thing is pretty refreshing in a kind of a world where it can get a bit murky and really difficult to navigate.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's time. I think that consumers are calling for it. There's increase in the desire for transparency across all sorts of companies, and so I think that we'll do well, and we're hoping that if other companies are looking at it too and going, oh, this Arrow company is really taken off, maybe they'll adopt some of our standards too. Like that would be actually really helpful to the mission.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, two more questions. Most important questions. How are you finding the Stanley Cup playoffs this year? We're recording on a day where we've wrapped up the second round. We're heading into the third round of the conference championships. How are you finding the Stanley Cup playoffs this year?
Well, we've brought up a couple times that I'm Canadian and it'd be nice. I know that usually it's Canadians winning the cup for American teams. I know that, but it'd be nice to see the cup come back to Canada. So exciting that there's some Canadian teams in it. And I'd like to see McDavid win the cup. He's honestly like he's helped to grow the Train 2.0 brand a lot. Because I get to use him as a case study for a lot of things. So I'd love to see him get that in the kind of the universe of karma.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't think you could have a more even split between these four teams. I mean, maybe something happens in this round, but man, I have no idea who's going to advance out of this round. They all have so much parity, so many pros and cons. It's going to be fun to watch. And I'll go toe to toe with anybody on this. It's the best season in sports. If you like sports and you don't appreciate the Stanley Cup playoffs, I don't know what to tell you. I've got nothing to tell you. And the second last final question: Utah Mammoth. What do you think of the team name?
I love it actually.
Really?
Yes.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
So they did what they wanted to do when Ryan Smith brought the team here. He wanted everybody in Utah to have a vote, and so there were like 8 initial names, and by far the best one that everybody loved was Yeti. Everybody wanted to be the
Yes.
Utah
Yeah.
Yeti. I thought that would fit and that would be good, but we had problems with Yeti, the brand, and
Yes.
the
Yes. Yes.
trademarking, so we
Yeah.
couldn't do that. So anyway, it got whittled down to the final 3. The first one was Keep Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah.
Little bit awkward name, really grew on me. I love the branding. It really grew on me over the year.
Yeah.
Rolled off the tongue a little bit more. The second was the Utah Outlaws as
Yeah.
like a cap tip to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and all the different
Yeah.
outlaws we had here. And the third one was Mammoth. Mammoth kind of ran away with it. Of those 3 finalists, do you think Mammoth is the best one in your opinion?
I like Mammoth. Yeah. It's not settled though, is it? Is it settled or?
It was announced maybe like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so
Okay. Okay.
it is
Yeah.
official.
Yeah, so no, I like it. I like it because I don't know, it has like a good visual element to it. And it's unique. It's different. And also maybe it's good timing because I heard that through like genetic DNA testing and stuff, they might be able to bring some of these extinct species back. So who
There you
knows?
go.
Maybe you guys get a couple mammoths for the in front of the arena.
There you go. Yeah, it's cool too because in the first year, the fans kind of got the name Clubbers as the Utah Hockey Club. They
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
called themselves Clubbers, and so there's potential like branding there is like the caveman with the club
Yeah, yeah,
with,
yeah.
with the mammoth. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I appreciate your opinion there, dude. This has been an amazing conversation. I've learned a lot, and like I said, I not only have learned a lot from you and your awesome videos where you're creating tons of value for people who want it, but the standards that you guys are setting at the supplement with Arrow, I think is wonderful, and we could use a lot more of that. But for now, Jason, where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Well, it depends. Are you looking for admission help, hockey or supplements? So I think probably your listeners, if you're a hockey person, Train 2.0, we got a great YouTube channel, great Instagram, and you can find us there. And then if you're looking for supplements, arrowsupplements.com, and you can find us there. Where we have our first product is magnesium.
That's awesome. And then just for kicks and giggles, the other company, which kind of branding do you prefer, the Grant Me or the other one that you mentioned?
Admission prep. So admission prep is it is more what we do. Like we started out helping students win scholarships and grants, but then it grew more into admissions consulting and advising. And so it was necessary to have that name change because it was just confusing to people for a while.
Gotcha. So they can go to either one and get some
Yeah,
information or maybe get pointed to the right place.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. We'll link that up as well. Jason, like I said, this has been such a pleasure to chat with you and yeah, get to know you a little bit better and some of your training modalities and all the stuff you're doing with nutrition and supplementation is fantastic. So thank you so very much for all the hard work that you put in and all the content you've created to help people out there. And thank you for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me on, Casey. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was an honor. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.